here with episode 11. Randy Holt with Steve Drumwright. Steve, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good, Randy. How are you?
I am doing well. A lot of things going on in and out of the baseball world. Tonight, we're going to talk about, we'll do our weekly recap. We'll kind of talk about the standings in the National League wildcard a little bit, even though if you listened last week, they look exactly the same as they did last week. But we'll kind of break down where things stand there, probably look at the schedules a little bit, and then get into our weekly recap. And then our primary discussion tonight is going to center around the new ownership group that purchased the Padres, had their press conference earlier this week. So lots of things to talk about there. We'll kind of talk about our main takeaways and then look at what we have going on for the weekend as the Padres take on a kind of terrifying opponent in the Rays. So
It'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah, especially. We'll talk about it. We'll get there.
Yeah,
So
we'll get there.
let's talk about the wild card picture first, because we both had it in our minds that, well, I had it in my mind that the standings look different last week. I thought the Padres were up 2 games and down 2 games on the Diamondbacks and the Phillies, respectively. But it turns out these standings are exactly what they looked like last week. Is that a surprise to you at all?
Not really. The Padres did go 4-2 on this recent homestand, and as much as people are kind of griping about losing 2 out of 3 to the Pirates, there's a 4-2 homestand is pretty much what you would have expected from this homestand, and so they're right where they are. The Phillies and the Diamondbacks are just doing Phillies and Diamondbacks things. The Phillies had a big winning streak halted. They had won nine in a row, and then came back to earth a little bit. So it's actually that the Padres are still within 2 games of the Phillies. I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it also seems noteworthy that, and this is part of the reason that the Padres are only up a game now, they're only 4 back of the Cubs. So I think the conversation, this time next week, it could look even different. We talked about the fact that it's kind of nice knowing the Padres don't have to beat out both the Diamondbacks and the Phillies. They just have to beat out one of those teams. But now you're talking about a 3rd spot being open because the Cubs are doing that thing where all right, they didn't score any runs on Wednesday, and the vaunted late inning arm of Jacob Webb melted down in Arizona, and that's what cost the Padres the game. That and losing their own game. But it does seem like if the Cubs don't get sorted, they could enter one of those stretches where the bullpen's a little shaky, the offense is a little shaky, and all of a sudden we're talking about an entirely different picture in just a matter of days.
Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly what the Cubs schedule looks like, but I know that they do have 7 games remaining against the Brewers coming up here. So, that could help. That could be a big impact from Padres' perspective in the wild card standings.
Yeah, they have the Cubs have the Reds. Let's talk about schedule a little bit, because I do think that is a worthwhile discussion, because the Cubs will play the Reds for 3 and then the Brewers early next week, and then the Marlins and the Brewers again in Milwaukee, which I don't know how much that changes the calculus, but the Brewers I've said before, they shouldn't be illegal because they just inexplicably don't lose. Every time I look, I know they have lost games this month, but it doesn't really feel like it. So, and the Marlins, it's not as if the Marlins are well out of the mix either. They're 4 back of the final wild card spot. So they still have something to play for.
They're right there. The Marlins are a team that I'm kind of keeping my eye on because, in addition to the Cubs, the Padres have to face the Marlins yet too.
Right. So that's could get really tricky for the Cubs really fast. The team directly in front of them, the Phillies, we mentioned last week, they have the Angels. So they have kind of a cupcake series in Anaheim. Hopefully they get a quick trip to Disney in there. I don't know how much that's possible, but that'd be pretty dope for them. And then they'll go to Arizona. And that could have a lot to say about kind of where things shift. I don't think there's going to be a dramatic shift with any of the 3 teams that are packed right next to each other, but that has a chance to kind of create something. But then they have the Braves and then the Astros and then the Braves again. So the Phillies don't have it easy again.
The Phillies actually have a really tough schedule. They have a week where they play the Nationals and the Mets, both on the road though. And
Yeah, and the Mets
otherwise,
are playing better.
the Mets are playing better, and the Nationals aren't necessarily a pushover. But otherwise, they're playing first place teams throughout the month.
Yeah, and then because they close with Milwaukee and Tampa.
Yeah,
So yeah, tough sledding for the Phils, and then the Diamondbacks have the Giants for 4 starting tonight. So they play in about 30 minutes. They'll start their first game, and that I don't feel great about because what have they lost like 1 game against San Francisco this year?
right.
They've just
Yeah,
kind of owned them, and then obviously they have the Phillies, and then the Astros, and then the Royals. So I think the Diamondbacks actually have the most favorable lineup here. And then it'll get a little bit tougher towards the end. They have the Yankees, and then we mentioned the Rockies are going to be a really annoying team to play late. So that could be kind of
right.
really like as much as I'm disinclined to watch a Diamondbacks Rockies matchup in any way, that could actually be really fascinating at that particular point in the calendar.
No doubt.
And then the Padres and the Diamondbacks close the season against each other. So that might be mildly stressful.
Yeah, I mean the Padres would be good on themselves if they put themselves in a situation where that Diamondback series doesn't really mean much,
Right.
But
Yeah.
that
And
it's
they are hosting the series too.
yeah, that series when they go up to the Dodgers just before that, begin that last week of the season, that could be one where popping some bottles or they're starting to sweat it out.
Yeah. Yep. So and then the Padres, we'll talk about their upcoming schedule with them. The Rays this weekend in Tampa, then they go to Cincinnati, then return home for the Yankees and the Nats. And then they get the Giants and then they get the Rockies for 4. So
Yeah,
like on paper, that is much more favorable than the Cubs or the Phillies, but it's a lot of road games too. And I know you have it noted in here that has not been as kind to the Padres in general as playing at Petco.
yeah. As we tape this on Thursday night, the Padres have 28 games left, and 16 of them are on the road. Now they're this trip to Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. That's their furthest that they go. They have to go to Colorado. Otherwise, they're all playing in California.
Yeah, and there are 3 more games against the Dodgers on the calendar right before that Diamondback series. So
Right.
would be real nice. Just a little streak here. Obviously, like you can't ask much more than the way they've played for roughly the entire month of August, but it would just be really nice if they kind of cruise for the next 3 weeks and then there's much less pressure for what will be a miserable experience in LA as it always is, regardless of
Mi-
result. And then
Miserable from your perspective.
yeah, we've been over this. I don't like super competitive, especially regular season. Like I have a hard enough time handling in the playoffs. I don't need it in the regular season. Just put it away and just whatever, go about your business. Yeah, I will not enjoy myself for that Tuesday to Thursday stretch that they play the Dodgers at the end of September. But anyway, that's all a very long way of saying the standings are exactly the same as we left them last week. And there is a potential for some much more shifting with the upcoming schedules and considering that the Phillies and the Diamondbacks play each other.
Yeah,
So
no doubt. There could be some pretty good movement as we get into September, but I think right now everything kind of feels like it should going into the last weekend of August.
yeah. So let's kind of talk about now that we've established all of that context. Let's talk about how the Padres got here with another really solid week that at the same time kind of I feel disappointed right now. I don't know where you're at, but before we get to the disappointment, let's talk about last weekend series against the Twins.
Yeah, so this is a series that set up the next series to be that could have been better, but the Padres welcomed the Twins to Petco Park. Friday's game started off with a 6-2 win. Randy Vasquez being Cy Vasquez right now, 7 innings pitched, 2 runs, no walks, 3 Ks. France, what else does he do? He hits home runs, 2-run homer, his 18th in the first inning. He had 3 RBIs, 2 walks. I don't know where the Padres would be without him.
Against his old team, Twins
Against his
legend
old
Ty
team.
France.
Yeah, he had some nice things to say about working with them, helping him get his defense where it is, and helping him win the Gold Glove last
Yeah.
year. The Gold
Can
Glove
I just
first
say
baseman in the AL. Yeah,
I need a 10-second aside. The Twins probably are not going to make the playoffs, but like that roster is becoming very fun very fast.
yeah. And then they just called up Walker Jenkins today. So
Right. So on top of
um,
Culpepper and Brooks Lee, and there's just a lot of really interesting things happening.
Culpepper looked really nice. Watching him play a full series at
Yeah.
shortstop, he's going to be a good one, particularly on defense. And if he can hit like he hit the home run, he'll be really nice for Twins fans.
Yeah. But none of that mattered even on Saturday or Sunday. Saturday, though, Saturday was pretty shocking just in terms of how that all manifested and how we've kind of seen similar games play out. But
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
talk about
So
that one a little bit.
this one Saturday was ended up being a 7-5 win, but it didn't look like that was going to happen early. The Padres were down 5-1 early. Casey Mize got hurt going down the stairs as he went back into the dugout after the second inning. He did come out, pitch another 2/3 of an inning before leaving. He actually is going to pitch on Friday, so that's good news. He's back in rotation. I don't think there's going to be any lingering effects. If he's starting, he's good to go.
Right.
But the Padres were down 5-1. They got a run in the sixth to start their comeback, and then they had a 4-run seventh inning. Jake Cronenworth with a 2-run double. Manny Machado with an RBI fielder's choice. On a ball, 2 Culpepper, the shortstop, he threw to third base, but the third baseman just whiffed on the catch, and that allowed Cronenworth to score all the way from second. And then Ty France had a go-ahead single, and then the Padres added another run in the eighth inning to win that one 7-5. The bullpen had a really nice game in this one, picking up Mize, leaving early. Your good buddy Griffin Canning with 3 1/3 innings, no runs. He looked really nice in that outing, and he's in general looked really good in his relief role. And I think if he sticks, if they don't decide to do something crazy here, he has a chance to have a nice role as that emergency guy out of the bullpen
Yeah.
and able to cover 2 innings early on, 3 innings early on, however it works out. You're going to need those guys
Right.
down the stretch and in the postseason.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to make me say nice things about Griffin Canning, I guess I can. He hasn't allowed a run in his last 3 appearances. The first of those was 1 inning, and then obviously the one against Minnesota where he threw 3 1/3, and then just a third of an inning against Pittsburgh yesterday. But yeah, in general, it's not like when was the last time he really exploded in Atlanta at the end of last month? So I mean, the entire month of August, he's been fine. That's
Yep.
as elevated as I can get about Griffin Canning. And you know what? That's okay. If he's fine, then we don't have a problem.
Right. Yeah.
I
And
have no beef with Griffin Canning at present. I am pleased to report.
beef is off. Good to know. Good to know. Um, then Padres brought in the dynamic duo of Adrian Morhone and Mason Miller to finish that one off. Miller with his 32nd save. And that took us to Sunday. We had a little Sunday stroll through the Petco Park. This is another Tatis game, and it's just fun when they happen. We got 2 last week, and there could be more on their way, which is a good omen for the Padres. Tatis with 2 home runs. He went 4 for 5, had 4 RBIs. Offensively, I think it was better than his game the previous Monday against the Mets. The only thing missing was a defensive masterpiece like the home
Mhm.
run robbery that he had. But this was a better game offensively for him than he had against the Mets. Jackson Merrill showed signs of breaking out. He got a homer. And then Walker Buehler with perhaps his best game in a Padres uniform. 6 innings, 1 run, 4 hits, no walks, 4 Ks. There wasn't the struggle bus that he's been on recently. He looked really good. And just, again, the Padres rotation is looking really nice right now.
Yeah. So 2 things I want to note here. One is the fact that they came back in that Saturday game because that had the chance to be a real kind of vibe killer going into into Sunday and then early in the week.
Right.
But what I really liked was that they took that energy and then turned it into a non-competitive game on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the second thing I want to mention, this is Walker Bueller's last three starts. August 11th against Milwaukee, 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 5 strikeouts. The 17th, 6 innings, 2 runs, 2 hits, 4 strikeouts. And then the 23rd, 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. If that is the Griffin Canning that they're getting, yeah, the rotation suddenly feels just pretty incredible given where we were a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bueller putting together that sort of an effort, it just I think that comes with the relief of the pressure that those
Yeah,
guys
you mentioned
had to
that
be
last week.
feeling. That those
Yeah,
guys had to be feeling. I mean, I know that they've said the things. Michael King in particular, he goes, "No, I need to be better." Because now these guys are pitching their butts off. But I think this gives some guys like Bueller, who's been through the fires, just notches down that pressure just a little bit, and maybe he's not trying to be as fine he was before. It's really nice to see.
yeah, absolutely. And I plan to talk about Randy Vasquez more toward the end of the show, but we mentioned it for both of those guys where they can kind of just go do their thing. And Vasquez, granted, probably has more pressure on him between the two of them with Joe Musgrove's return on the horizon, but it's definitely starting to manifest in really quality outings from the back end now that they have kind of the front to the middle of the rotation sorted out, which what more can you ask for?
Yeah, I mean, with Bueller and Vasquez right now is your 4 and 5, and then you got Mize, King, and Ray as your 1, 2, 3. In whatever order you want to put that in, uh, it's such a nice conversation to be having now, rather than figuring out the chaos bullpen twice a turn through the rotation.
Right.
It's really really good.
Yeah. And realistically, like those rotation vibes, even though Monday, Tuesday were both disappointing outcomes in terms of the game, like the starting pitching continued to do exactly what they've been doing.
Yeah, and as you said, so that takes us right into the Pirate series. Robbie Ray had in the third innings 2 runs, if it's 2 walks, 5 Ks. I mean, that's kind of what you expect out of him.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
pretty characteristic outing.
yeah, he loves. I swear that he's going to walk somebody intentionally just to put somebody on base so that he
Yeah.
feels more comfortable on the mound. But this would end up being a 3-2 loss in 12 innings. The Padres did come back to tie it in the eighth inning. Jake Cronenworth with an RBI single to center. He was 2 for 5. Good to see him have a nice game. But there was a lot of missed opportunities in this game. They went 1 for 13 with runners in scoring position. Cronenworth again. He was their player of the game that game. He had a really nice defensive play where he scooped up and just with his glove motion flipped it over to first base in the 11th inning. That kept that inning from being out of control. But they just couldn't get any hits. The Padres couldn't get any hits in the extra innings, while the Pirates finally did in the top of the 12th. Nick Gonzalez with an RBI single for the zombie runner.
Should we just roll that right into Tuesday? Because that
Yeah, yeah,
had
yeah,
it carried a really similar energy
yeah. So
in
this is
in
another.
more ways than one.
Yeah, so this is another one-run game that was decided late, and this is unexpected how it was decided late. O'Neill Cruz with a home run in the top of the ninth inning. Mason Miller threw a rare changeup. It was a 98.2 mile an hour
Yeah,
changeup down and inside. It was at the very
change up.
bottom of the zone. Yeah, he's only thrown that was only the 22nd that he's thrown this year.
Yeah,
And he kind of questioned that a little bit, whether he should have thrown that, but he said that Cruz put the bat on the ball, and all credit goes to Cruz on that one. But Michael King, excellent outing, 7 innings, no runs. If it's 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, again, that's if he's going to be an ace or a number 2 on this rotation going down the stretch, what you want to see out of him. And then again, so the one thing that we haven't talked about, they were facing Paul Skeens in this one, and Paul
right.
Skeens wasn't hasn't been the Paul Skeens. I mean, his ERA is in the mid threes coming into this game. I think it was 3.59 going into that game, but he threw 6 shutout innings. He looked like he was finding something that he was missing. And the Padres were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position in this game. So that made him 1 for 20 in the first 2 games of the series.
I just want to point out that what was it, 2 weeks ago, that I said the Pirates were the team I was most afraid of down the stretch.
That was a while ago. It wasn't more than 2. It was more than 2.
Was it
2 weeks ago?
Was it closer to the deadline? Maybe 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
This is why, honestly, like their offense has been much better over the course of the year, and I know that they've done well in a number of categories. But like these are the types of guys that you have to face as a hitter.
Right.
Skeens and the collection of arms that they possess, even if they're both. And I mean, they were very busy in improving their bullpen, so you can't even take that into account. And what's funny is like, yeah, in my mind I was right, but also there's still 7.5 games out of a wild card spot. So
yeah, well, I mean, they lost Ryan O'Hearn offensively, so that's hurting.
Right. Yeah.
But your point is right on. I mean, they faced 3 really good right-handers in this series. They faced Braxton Ashcraft. We didn't really talk about him because we're focused on the Padres in the first game on Monday. Then they had Skeens on Tuesday. And then they had Bubba Chandler on Wednesday. And, if the Pirates were in contention, that would be a scary 1, 2, 3 for a postseason.
Right.
But the Padres didn't do as well as they should have in this series, but it wasn't because they were facing some of the scrubs who were shutting the Padres down in May and June. They were facing 3 really good pitchers.
Right. I think the last 2 games of the series, they scored 3 runs in 21 innings. And I do think there's a world where that's like, all right, is the offense going out again? And I don't think that's anything that we really need to be worried about yet, because that's very impressive. That's not the Cubs starting top 3. It's not Colorado's. I'm just throwing out random teams now. There's very, very few teams that possess that kind of firepower in the rotation. So, obviously we'll talk about their bounce back on Wednesday, but to lose those 2 games, disappointing as it may have been, the runners in scoring position issue taken into account, that's very much an it is what it is kind of situation, and nothing to like, especially because the standings didn't move from week to week. Had there been more of a shift, then maybe we're a little bit more stressed out about it. But I think the nature of that kind of matchup with as far as your pitching goes, especially because your starters also pitched really well, it just 1-run games didn't fall in your favor. It's everything's fine.
I mean,
we're good.
I think that's the benefit of winning that game on Saturday. You stole that one when you were expecting to win 2 out of 3, and you swept the Twins. Then you lose a game, whichever game you want to talk about, Monday or Tuesday. Normally you would expect to lose a Skeens game. I thought there was a chance that because of how Skeens was pitching, that they had a chance to win that game.
Yep.
But they lost 2 out of 3 in this series, and you're still 6-2 in 2 series that you thought that, or 4-2 in a 6-game series, 6-game homestand where you thought you would go 4-2, maybe 5-1 if you were lucky.
Right.
They did what they needed to do in that series, in that homestand, and they did what they needed to do. Yeah.
I was going to say, bouncing back on Wednesday and stealing that last game of the series.
Yeah, I mean,
it makes us feel a lot better than we otherwise might have. But 4-2 homestand.
Right.
Those 2 losses being against who they were facing on the mound is good. But the Wednesday game was super crucial coming off of those 2 losses, and I don't feel like we should understate that either.
No, and I thought this was one of the better balanced games that the Padres have had this year. It was only 3-0. You can make an argument for the Padres should have had some more runs, but they had just enough to back up Randy Vasquez. Vasquez only went 5 innings, no runs, 1 hit. I think, he retired the first 9 hitters he faced in the last 3, but he ran into a little trouble in the 4th inning there. And I think there were some signs in there that may have prompted the pitching change for that. But then the bullpen was really good, mostly really good. Kyle Hart came in, had a nice inning. Griffin Canning only faced three batters, and he was a little shaky. And I don't know if it was a plan just for him to face three, or if they were, wanting, or if they were going to bring Matsui in regardless, or if Matsui was the backup plan. Then Yuki came in and finished off that inning, and then Raji Rodriguez. Whew, he's looking really good. He had two scoreless innings. His ERA is the lowest in Padres history for I think it's his first 63 appearances, however many he's made in his career. He's looking like a back into the bullpen guy for the rest of this season and for the rest of his career. And
Yeah.
the offense was provided by some different sources. Jackson Merrill continued his little bit of a surge. He had an RBI triple, and then he also doubled. And then Jake Cronenworth had an RBI double. So it was nice to see some of the other players besides Tatis come through in France, come through for the Padres offensively.
Yeah, and at some point soon it might be worth it for us to kind of dig into Jake Cronenworth a little bit, just because, man, that it would be real nice to see that guy make an impact with any level of consistency. And it feels like every night he's on base once or twice, he's collecting maybe a single, he's 1 for 4 with a strikeout and a single or something like that. And that just feels like the norm. And even the power that was already modest over the last couple of years is gone. So, it's really upsetting because he was my guy just like 2 years ago, and then it just doesn't feel like. But the fact, like, if he could do that and occasionally contribute to back it wasn't a quality start, but it was a good start from Vasquez.
Right.
Just doing things like that, even once or twice a week, I think would go a long way towards lengthening this lineup a little bit. And obviously,
Yeah.
Merrill's been at it for a while because he's definitely bounced back mostly from his early stretches.
Yeah. And that's going to be key for, down the stretch and into the postseason, that they need that lineup. They're going to need the bottom of the lineup to produce. And
Right.
they're getting good production out of the catching spot, which is something else that we should talk about at some point.
Yeah.
But getting Cronenworth to be producing down there, that would be a good thing.
Especially because, like, he's not going anywhere. Sun Moon Song is in El Paso. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, you theoretically could throw Luis Rengifo there, but they've used him almost exclusively in the outfield. So he's going to be there every day. He's got to. It just has to shift a little bit, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a good win for them on Wednesday, something that they needed to. I think we would be having a little bit of a different conversation had they gone 3-3 going into this road trip to
Right.
Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the standings not moving like that, it just a very stable week, honestly.
Yeah.
So maybe the most normal week we've had since
Very true.
we've been doing this pod. So, all right, that's going to do it for a weekly recap. And we're going to shift into our main discussion of the evening, which is kind of reflecting on some of the things, some of the vibes, some of the statements from the Padres' new pair of owners. Steve, you have been very deep in the weeds, listening to the press conference, following a lot of the news around it. Let's hear your thoughts, and then I have a couple of my own to share.
So through my career in journalism, I've listened to plenty of coach, GM, owner, different types of press conferences when they take a job. And this might have been one of the more fun press conferences that I've ever heard. And I thought this was a pretty much a vibes-based press conference from the song that Kwanza Jones wrote as their walk-in music, to just like how they conducted themselves during the press conference. It was kind of almost a party vibe without it being a party vibe. It was just like a bunch of friends sitting together there asking questions, and you didn't get the real like corporate speak from
Right.
Jose Feliciano or Kwanza Jones during this press conference.
Yeah, it wasn't even just the vibe from them. It was the vibe that, like, the media asking questions also carried. Like, it seemed like everybody in that room was just in a really good place, which is not ever the vibe. I've haven't sat in an actual room or anything like that, but just like watching press conferences when there's a new president of baseball ops or new ownership, like when the Ricketts took over or anything like that. But like it never feels like that. Even if like
Right.
the owner or executive, whoever it may be, like they may have good energy to them, they may be positive. It never feels like, yeah, I'd like to hang out with these people.
Right. Yeah.
And that
And
that
I
was a very weird feeling to encounter with billionaires sitting at a podium.
Yeah, well, and you talk about the good vibes from the media, and I just think that that says a lot about where the Padres are as a franchise right now. There are no major questions around this franchise right now. The debt has been wiped out with the sale. That all goes with the Seidler family. That was part of the sale price of $3.9 billion that Jones and Feliciano paid. That debt is gone. That's off their books. It may still be on the Padres books, but that's being taken care of by the Seidler family. There's no stadium issue. The fans sell out that stadium pretty much every night. You know, um, you know, there's going to be some roster questions to ask down the line, but that's nothing to address
For
right now.
sure. Right.
It's going to be a spending question, not only this season but going forward, and how they get out of maybe a little bit of a hole that they're in from a roster construction standpoint. But
Yeah.
it's nothing that they need to really address right now.
Yeah. I think they did it. They definitely danced around those questions, but I didn't think it was in an unproductive way. They were essentially saying kind of what you're saying, like, yeah, we'll address these things when it's the appropriate time to address them. And right now, in the midst of a playoff chase, is not the time to talk about the fact that Vander Bogarts and Jay Cronenworth and all these guys are on the books into 2030 or however long it is.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that is a really important point. Is like, what is the worst thing you could say about the Padres right now, other than the fact that they have tried to win over the last few years?
I mean, the worst thing is that you can say is that they're locked into some long-term contracts. You
Right.
know, but you can't say anything about field. You can't say anything about the stadium. You can't say anything about the
Yeah.
fans. Everything is good. And Eric Grupner, the CEO, made a comment that these are the right people to come along at the right time for the Padres. They can build on Peter Seidler's legacy and elevate the experience. Hopefully, that includes a World Series championship. But even if it does, I think fans are gonna um, see them do good things around the club, the field, and on the field.
Yeah, and that does kind of speak to one of the ideas that I took away from it, because Kwanza Jones she kind of characterized it as like a symbiotic relationship between ownership, media, fans, baseball ops, the team on the field. And I do think that like in an ideal world that is generally how it works, but I've never really gotten that vibe from an owner. Like an owner has always been like in their high castle, just isolating themselves from the rest of it. While some of those other things might feel a little more community oriented, I've never really gotten that top to bottom in an organization. But I do feel like if there is a place where that concept of organizational synergy within the organization itself and with its community in the broader environment, it's probably San Diego. Like there are a couple, like, I'm sorry that I'm going to say this. The Cubs, obviously, because of their stadium situation and where it is located and the community element they have. But I don't think that ownership is part of that. Nor do I really think baseball ops is part of that. I think theirs is just more of a community vibe because of the atmosphere itself. But I do think that
Mhm.
the Padres feel like a little more singular of an organization just because they're the biggest game in town, and they have curated a really excellent atmosphere in their stadium, around their stadium. And if you have an owner that follows through on this, like Peter Seidler really felt like that investment was important and that involvement and that presence, then I do think that, again, whether it's a World Series or not, I think all of those things are signs of a very, very healthy organization that not a lot of organizations have the ability to actually demonstrate.
Yeah, just from where the Petco Park is, downtown San Diego, people can if they're out for dinner in the gas lamp district, oh, hey, let's go to the ball game. Find a ticket. You're gonna have to pay
Right.
for it. But it's just it. The Padres games are a destination, and you can't say that, for the people who live in the city. They're basically landlocked from LA. You're either a Padres fan or you're either a Padres fan or a Dodgers fan. In Southern California, yeah, the Angels are there, but they don't really matter. And it's they're connected by a highway, and it's by a freeway, and I think the Padres are just like tucked down in the corner of Southern California, way on the West Coast. So they don't really get a lot of attention that a Baltimore might get. Because they're in a they play in the AL East where all the media markets are,
Right.
and they have a nice stadium as well. But I think the Padres are just like they're kind of tucked away, and I think a flashy owner probably wouldn't have been a good one for the Padres. Never know what that'll be. These guys are very community oriented. It's a personal investment for them. They're not using
Right.
the Clear Lake Capital that Feliciano founded. This is their money out of their back pockets that they're using to buy this team, along with other minority owners. This is their team, and they're going to do what they can to continue having this be a community team.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to one of my other main takeaways. And I think both of them said this throughout the press conference, but the use of the word steward rather than owner, like the steward of the franchise. And I like, you hear that sometimes, but I do feel like that mindset gets lost among sports ownership in general, because on paper, especially in baseball, ownership is something for the portfolio. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I own this baseball team, I own this business, and I am cashing out as much as I can. But I think I think the majority of fans would prefer them to maintain a steward of the franchise type of ideal in their mind, where they're actually providing for that community of which they are a part, and not just acting as if this is my portfolio. I don't really care what happens, win or lose, but as long as I'm maximizing profit. And I think just that language of using steward, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I do hope that speaks to how they actually plan to run this, so that they don't lose anything. And what drew me to this team as kind of a secondary West Coast following in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
while obviously building on it in terms of the quality and the community efforts, and eventually the achievement of a World Series. So, I do think that just that word steward carries a lot of weight as long as it is followed through and actually executed.
Yeah, 100%. It's they're not here to deconstruct and rebuild a franchise or a team.
Right.
They've been given a sports car that has gas in the tank and doesn't need to go into the shop right now. It's revving and ready to go. And we'll see how that impacts the rest of the season. But they're there to make sure that the car stays polished, and to make sure it stays finely tuned. They're not there to reconstruct the car. And so I think that has part to do with the good vibes that everyone's feeling. I haven't heard, unless you're a Dodger fan, I haven't heard one negative thing to be made public about this group.
Yeah, and that's, it got me feeling optimistic about billionaires, which is a weird place to begin with. But my cynical brain is like, all right, where's that other shoe going to drop? But
Right, right.
I just don't think there's anything to really worry about right now, and maybe something manifests on the horizon. But for right now, yeah, the only issue with this team is the long-term contracts, and that's something that that can be pretty easily navigated. We've seen teams do it before. So
Yeah.
whatever shape that all takes, we'll see. But I think the important things are going to continue to be in place and continue to allow the Padres to be what makes them an appealing baseball organization anyway.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the Padres are in good hands with Jose E. Feliciano and Kwanza Jones.
Well, perfect. Bringing in both names back at the end. So that gives us a seamless transition. Do you have anything else on ownership, Steve?
No,
As I ruin the transition.
no, yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's pivot to the minor league report, which is primarily a major league report just happening in the minor leagues.
Yeah, so I mean, the minor league teams are all within like the last 2 3 weeks of their regular season, uh, similar to the Padres having a month left. But um, the real things that are important that are happening at the minor league level have been the rehab outings by Nick Pivetta on Tuesday, and then Joe Musgrove tonight. We'll start with Pavetta. He was very solid in his return after 3 weeks. He had the scary incident at Lake Elsinore 3 weeks, exactly 3 weeks ago Tuesday. But he looked really sharp, and not sharp, but he looked really good for a first rehab outing. He went 3 innings, 48 pitches, 35 strikes. He did give up 2 home runs to the Angels' third-round draft choice this year, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. But you can't really look at the line score or a pitcher especially in their first rehab outing. You just
Right.
want them to get their work in, feel comfortable, and wake up the next day feeling fine. And I haven't heard anything negative about Nick Pivetta since his first outing at Lake Elsinore went about as well as you can expect. And then tonight, this might be the frosting on the cake here. Joe Musgrove looked really good tonight. He only went 5 innings and 60 pitches. He was cruising along. Um, he made a start for El Paso tonight. Only gave up 1 run, uh, no walks, 3 strikeouts. He looked as efficient. He looked like he was pitching to get back into the San Diego rotation tonight. And his next start is likely to be with the Padres next week, either maybe the series finale against the Reds, or perhaps the home opener against the Yankees next Friday.
Doesn't it feel like that's kind of the ideal scenario for him to come back?
Yeah, I think
Friday
that
Friday night, City Connects against the Yankees.
I think you don't want to put him in the bandbox of Cincinnati. I think that you would rather have him start at home, and I just trying to do the math real quick in my head here. That should work out just fine. With get Randy Vasquez having another start, it's going to allow the Padres to reset their rotation for the stretch drive and play a little matchups down the stretch.
Right. Do you what are you anticipating as far as the expansion of rosters? So do you think the Padre? I'm trying to kind of navigate this idea in my mind, like a lot of teams have a marquee prospect, especially those teams out of contention who want to get them a little exposure. Generally, there's some kind of, you know, quad A reliever or somebody just to eat some innings. Like it's not as exciting a proposition as it used to be, but it feels like the Padres could just use the roster expansion just to bring some guys back from the injured list. But I don't know what your thought
Right.
is on that.
Yeah. So I think Samad Taylor would be back right now if this was June or July.
Yeah.
He spent all last week at El Paso, had a nice suite there, and I was surprised. So the Padres made a move on Tuesday, Monday, to bring Dustin Harris up from
Yeah.
AAA, outfielder who does have major league experience. I was surprised that was not Samad Taylor, but that could just be delaying Taylor to just get some more consistent at bats, because he's not going to get the consistent at bats that he was having with the Padres before he got injured, his oblique injury, because of the emergence of Luis Rengifo. I expect Rengifo to remain the starting left fielder. Now they can play some more matchups, though, with Taylor and Rengifo able to play second base. Rengifo can play third. And I don't know, that might get Manny off his feet for a day, to let him DH or actually have a day off. But I think that's the easy part of that. Jeremiah Estrada just went on the injured list. I had penciled David Morgan to take up the pitching slot
Yeah.
for the Padres. I was a little unprepared for this, but let me see if I can figure this out real quick.
Well, I think the point is like there's nobody obvious that they're going to call up. I wasn't trying to gotcha you or anything, but
no, no,
like
no. I know.
it
I was
just
just
feels like it's almost like a little bit of an out for them to get some guys back without having to make roster decisions right
so,
away, whereas other teams are going to be like making more assertive additions to their roster. The Padres are just going to make more passive ones. Is my thought.
right, and there's names on the pitching side to bring up at least for a couple games next week. I mean, you can talk about J.P. Sears. You can talk about Alec Jacob. You can talk about Johnny Brito, who had a cup of coffee. They could also bring Hunter Stratton, who they got in the trade at the trade deadline. They could come up very big wild card, and I don't think this will happen. Jose Leclerc, who the Padres signed to a minor league contract in spring training at the end of spring training. He's kind of been having a little bit of a rocky experience. He's coming off the minor league IL, but so they have some options there. Then there are some prospects that they could bring up, but I don't think any of them should be called up over any of the guys that I just mentioned.
I forgot entirely that Jose Leclerc was even on the roster. Hey, Steve, do you remember when the Padres signed Lucas Giolito?
I do. Lucas Giolito would be another
Because
option.
because that was the thing I forgot about. All right,
Yeah,
let's move into. I know we kind of already hashed out the schedule. Well, let's talk about the immediate matchups that the Padres will confront in Tampa Bay. Which I'm looking at these pitching matchups and I'm looking at these numbers and I'm like, oh boy, didn't they just go up against three really good starting pitchers?
yeah. So the Padres are going to face the brunt of the Rays rotation. It's going to be Casey Mize in his return. Not really return. He didn't go anywhere, but his ankle was fine. He's going to face Shane McClanahan on Friday, and then on Saturday you're going to have Walker Buehler against former Padre Nick Martinez, and then on Sunday you've got Robbie Ray against Drew Rasmussen. So those are three really nice pitching matchups. It's going to be in Tampa Bay, where Tampa Bay plays really well. They're obviously in playoff mode as well. They're 3.5 games up on the Yankees in the AL East. They've got the third best home record, 43-23, while the Padres scuffle on the road, 31-34 away from Petco, and they struggle against teams that are 500 below, 25-32. I'm sorry, that's against winning teams, 25-32 against winning teams. The
Yeah,
series against the Rays, it's going to be a big challenge.
it's real tough to feel good about that one. Obviously, like things will even out by this time next week, but like so the Padres are going up against the three horses in Tampa, while the Phillies get to visit the Angels and the Diamondbacks are playing the Giants. So things could shift, but then we went through the schedule, so hopefully that all finds a way to balance out. But that just feels really tough. I'm like
Yes.
clinging to the fact that Nick Martinez's underlying stuff isn't quite as good as his actual outputs, but the other two guys, it's like, yep, they're as good as their numbers. There's
Yeah.
nothing there that indicates like, oh, regression. And Nick
Yeah.
Martinez,
Yeah.
and even Nick Martinez, it's like kind of modest. It's not just like, oh, this guy's gonna implode. It's like, no, he might have a clunker, but he's been really good too.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say it. I think the Padres need to get one game out of this series.
Yeah.
And yes, that'll make them 2-6 for the week. Because or 2-4 for the week because they came off the 1-2 week against the Pirates. They go 1-2 against the Rays, but it'll be fine because then they go to Cincinnati where they should beat up on the Reds and perhaps sweep the Reds, if not
Right.
take at least 2 out of 3. So and then as we mentioned, I believe that's when the Diamondbacks and the Phillies square off. So that's where you get some of that evening out coming back.
Yep. Yeah. So I will do my best to remain as composed as possible, but I will also be in San Diego this weekend while the Padres are not. So I have every reason to remain composed in America's finest city. So that will take some of the edge off a little bit.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Steve, what's your final thought for the week?
My final thought kind of popped up out of nowhere. Yu Darvish had a second bullpen session, not his first one, a second bullpen session for the Padres yesterday on Wednesday. and everything seemed to go well. It was called a light bullpen session, but he doesn't know whether he wants to come back or not. But he's putting himself in position to make that decision. He's rehabbing his arm, and he's still under contract for next year and the year after at $15 million per. But it's not, as we know with Yu Darvish, it's not about the money. He basically forfeited his $16 million this year. He went on the restricted list. He's not counting against any rosters or anything like that. He gave up $16 million this year as he rehabbed his arm. He had the internal brace surgery last October. But if he is coming back, it was a nice step to see. Just that he's putting himself in position to make a good decision about his future, even at 40 years old.
Yeah, what a fascinating person, just in
He
general.
really is. Yeah.
Like, man, at his height, I love watching him pitch so much. He definitely feels like a guy who's going to be around the organization. Like, obviously, he's pitched in a few places. I'm sure he left an impact there, but it feels like he just kind of wants to be around.
Yeah. Well, his son
So,
is up playing college ball down there.
right.
I forget. I think it's at USD. Maybe it's at UCSD. But his son is a freshman on the team down there, and so that would seem that he's at least committed to the next 4 years down in San Diego
Right.
somehow. But yes, I can see him being a total
UCSD.
ambassador. Okay. I can see him totally being an ambassador for the Padres at worst.
Absolutely. All right. My
What do you got,
thought, I
Randy?
just want to talk
Yeah.
a little bit more. I just want to talk about Randy Vasquez a little more.
Okay.
First of all, I enjoy it when a professional athlete shares my name. It's generally nice because not a lot of people have my name. So when they're performing at the level at which Randy Vasquez is performing, it feels even better because, we talked about him last week too. Like he was starting to just kind of do Randy Vasquez things where it was like, all right, 5 innings, 6 innings, 1 strikeout, but we're limiting base runners. And now in August, what has he made? He's made 5 appearances, 4 starts. His August ERA is 2.57, which is as good as he was in April. That is lower. It was 2.94 in April. So like he's been better, and it's not like there's tremendous underlying things that are worrisome either. Like his FIP is like 3. I forget what the number is. 3.23 is the number. So like there's nothing in there. I mean, there are definitely things because he doesn't strike anybody out when you're not a strikeout thrower. Like there's going to be
Mhm.
some things that are a little bit concerning. But the fact is he's navigated around quality contact. In his last 2 starts, he's thrown 12 innings. He's allowed just 2 runs, 2 walks. And I think in August, he's only walked 4 hitters total across, let me do quick math. Watch this. 12, 17, 22, 28, bang. That is a minimal number of walks for a guy who had pretty woeful command stretches earlier in his career. So,
Yeah.
whatever ends up happening with him upon Joe Musgrove's return, whether it's a temporary 6-man situation, which it probably doesn't need to be.
Right.
But even as a piggyback option, as Musgrove gets comfortable, or if they're comfortable just letting Walker Buehler like hit 5 innings and then call it good. I don't know. I'm just throwing things out there.
Right.
He'll definitely be a crucial part down the stretch, and I think it's really good considering a month ago we were like, well, that fun from early in the season is gone forever, but it's actually back, and I like that it's back.
Yeah. Whatever magic Ruben Niebla has worked with Randy Vasquez, it's good to see. I was really encouraged by his start to the season, and then I'm going like, oh, he's going backwards now, and but he's finishing up the season strong, and it comes at the right time. They're going to need him down the stretch.
Right. Well, Steve, that's all I had for tonight.
We did it, Randy. We got another one done.
Episode in the books. We're through 11. We're going to be through a dozen next week. That's crazy. What a great job by us. We're amazing. All right, Steve, everyone listening, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Hopefully the Padres also have a wonderful weekend in a very difficult matchup. But either way, whether it's good or bad, we will talk to you guys about it next week.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Take care.